Hey folks, David Stewart here. We are back after a little break for the weather for a couple weeks here. Took about a week to get the power back on and then an extra 3 days to get internet restored. About what I had estimated about 10 days. I had actually estimated 10 days for power, but they got it back a little earlier than I thought they would be able to do because of all the damage from the hurricane. But we're back. So today I want to talk a little bit more about marketing, and specifically marketing to men and women. This has been kind of a hot topic on Twitter because some article that I published is like, why aren't men reading novels? Which is really stupid, partly because men do read novels. And really the headline should be, why aren't men buying the books that we're publishing right now? Because that's really what it is men actually do read lots of fiction. There is a little bit of a gender divide on nonfiction versus fiction popularity. Nonfiction is traditionally, and I think this is true now, is more popular with men than it is with women, and women are more interested in fiction comparatively than men. But that doesn't mean men don't read fiction. They read plenty of it. And it doesn't mean women don't read nonfiction. They read plenty of it, right? It's just sort of which one has a little bit more of an emphasis, which one likes one thing more. There are entire literary genres that are by and for women. The big one, of course, is going to be romance, right? If you are looking at the romance genre, the vast majority of the readership is women. There are men who read romance, right? But the vast majority of the market is women. And not only is it important to understand that you're writing for women if you're going to write a romance novel, but it's also important to know that women also have certain preferences, like consumer preferences, that go a little bit beyond that. One of them is that they're more likely to buy a book from another woman writer, at least in the romance genre. This may not be true in other genres, like fantasy or something like that, but it's pretty true in romance, is that female authors, like, it's really common if you're a male writing romance to just pick a female pen name, because that gets rid of, not all readers will have a prejudice, but those that do, the prejudice is towards female writers. Whether that's a subconscious prejudice or not, it's just a marketing thing, right? So men read lots of fiction and they read lots of fantasy. They may be reading older books, right? So most of the men that I know who read a lot of fiction, they tend to buy a lot of used books. So they're reading things that are like pre-1980. They're reading a lot of classics. And the classics that they choose to read are going to be different than the classics that a lot of women choose to read. Men, you'll find them reading Dostoevsky. You're going to find women reading Jane Austen. And that's different. Women tend to be more interested in things like John Steinbeck for some reason, and men like Ernest Hemingway. It's just a little thing that happens. There's something about the way Steinbeck writes that is slightly more appealing to the female perspective versus the way Hemingway writes is slightly more appealing to the male perspective. None of these things, by the way, carry judgment. Like, it's not bad. I do not think that women are bad for not liking Glenn Cook books or something, or not wanting to read Tom Clancy novels. And men are not bad for not wanting to read romance novels or Janet Ivanovich or whatever. It's just the difference in the market. When we're looking at aggregate data that's everybody put together, it's not about, oh, well, I know this woman who's really into Tom Clancy. Yeah, that doesn't matter. It's just about what the group tends to do overall. And so, yes, women tend to have different tastes than men. So the stupidity of saying why don't men read novels is misunderstanding that men do read novels. They're just not reading the ones that you publish. And it's also, there's another level to this, which is that the publishing industry, the mainstream publishing industry, is incredibly female dominated. I did some videos on this about 2 or 3 years ago, maybe. They did a survey. They found about 80% of publishers are women. So the the industry is 80% women. And agents reflect that as well. Agents are like 70 to 80% women. So they are going to buy and represent and then publish books that are geared more towards themselves and the market that they exist in, rather than for men. That's just the way that it ends up working. So when you're looking at a really female-dominated industry and asking a question like, why don't men buy this? Like, why don't men buy purses? Because they don't, right? Who cares? It's just not something men are interested in. So if you're not publishing books men are interested in reading, the problem isn't that men are bad for reading, because that's really what they want to say. It's like, men bad because they don't read the books we write, which I don't have any judgment if women don't want to read my books. If it's like, why aren't women reading your books? I don't know. They don't like them. That's okay, right? They can read whatever they want to read. That's okay. And it's the same thing with any other divide of groups. It's like, why aren't more blacks buying your music? Does that matter? Like, if black Americans are buying my music or not? It just doesn't matter, right? They can buy what they want to buy. Every individual can buy what he wants to buy. So, yes, why aren't men buying our books? You see the same thing with Star Wars, right? And Disney. Disney's like, we've got the little girl market locked down. I remember they said this when they bought Marvel. It's like, we need more boys. We need to do more things for boys. So that's why we're buying Marvel, to do more stuff for the boys. So what do? They buy Marvel, and they're like, what do we need to do for Marvel? Well, obviously, girls should be interested in Marvel, so we'll put a girl in it and make it gay. And then it's like, why won't the boys buy Marvel? They're such sexist, homophobic bigots because they're not buying our crap, right? We took the thing that they liked before and we made it for girls, and they don't want it anymore for some reason. This attitude of like men bad for not buying product that we sell is it's a really bizarre perspective when you stop and think about it, but it's really pervasive in the modern zeitgeist, I guess. Men aren't watching. What happened to the men that watch Star Wars? This used to be a male-dominated IP. Well, they stopped watching when you stopped making products that they were interested in buying. It's not that, they hate women or something like that. That's always the line, is like, men hate women. It's like, that's not really true. Men are quite happy to read things with female protagonists. If you've ever spent time with a man playing games, he'll often play games with female protagonists or make his character female. I know I do it in like most MMOs. Why? Because females are more aesthetically pleasing, obviously, for a lot of men. That's the main answer. But it doesn't turn him off to see a woman doing anything, especially in a fantasy sort of setting. So it's really not that. It's really just once you start making things from the female perspective for females, men are not going to be as interested because we just tend to emphasize different things. Men tend to emphasize, for instance, plot. So I've mentioned this before. It's not that women aren't interested in complicated plots. That's nonsense. But men are more interested in a complex plot with many different sort of twists and turns to the event sequence and lots of action, whereas women are more interested in interpersonal drama. So if you have something like Game of Thrones, one of the reasons I think Game of Thrones was so appealing to so many different people is it had both of these things in it. It was essentially an interpersonal soap opera. So the interpersonal drama is constant throughout Game of Thrones. And women are going to pick up on that a lot. They're going to really care about those interpersonal outcomes. But there's also lots of events. There's also lots of stuff happening. There's a lot of story tension that gets its life from things actually happening in the story. People dying, getting betrayed, murdered, all that kind of stuff. So there's lots of great events happening in Game of Thrones as well. So you end up with kind of best of both worlds. It really is a soap opera, but it's got enough violence and action and plot and kind of intricacies of the plot that it's going to get the male demographic as well as the female demographic. And the setting matters too. Men are more interested in kind of medieval and complicated settings, historical settings that emphasize violence, war, politics. That tends to be something that cues in a lot to the male market. Women have a little bit different focus, right? They like the interpersonal conflict. If you were to make a story about Rome, if you wanted to get really the attention of female readers, you would have a lot of behind the scenes drama between the families about who's going to be emperor. And if you wanted to get the male demographic, you would emphasize the tactics of battle and the political machinations that set up that battle that bring that about, rather than purely, and maybe the ideas that are behind the different factions, the political factions, that would bring about the battle and cause the plot to resolve. It's not that women hate the battle, right? They need the battle for the interpersonal tension to resolve as well. And it's not that men hate interpersonal tension. That's the motivation for the battle to happen. But where the emphasis is going to be, how much time you're going to spend on the battle, right? Men are going to be more interested in like a tactically precise battle. Women are going to be more interested in some of the interpersonal conflicts that happen. I have some of this in Needle Ash, by the way. It opens with the interpersonal drama between several different characters. Then it goes into a battle, a rather lengthy battle sequence, and I think I spent a whole chapter dealing with it. But within the battle, it's not focused. The tactics are just a small part, and really it's the drama of the characters engaging in violence and trying to avoid dying. And likewise, the last part of the book has a really significant battle that lasts for quite a while for the book. But we have to set all that up with interpersonal drama and political machinations and plenty of events to get there as well. So it's more on the male-centered side if I were to think of the marketing direction. But there's things in it to appeal to women too. There's a romance, there's interpersonal drama, interpersonal conflict, there's an evil woman controlling a man, there's men being tempted. There's lots of things that might be interesting in a soap opera setting that are still present in that book. But the emphasis really is on the event sequence and on the politics and the battles, how those things end up working out, right? So it's just something to keep in mind, right? Like Disney, someone says, look at what happened to Star Wars. Just a Man 400 says, look what happened to Star Wars. Yeah. The whole problem with Star Wars and Marvel is that Disney paid billions so that they could have something to market towards the male audience that males were already really interested in. And as soon as they got control of it, the internal corporate politics said, we need to make this for women too, right? It shouldn't just be for boys. Well, the whole point was there was already things that were clearly for girls and the boys didn't care about. Like the fairy tale stuff and the princess stuff. That's for the girls. And we needed something for the boys. It's going to be superheroes. Well, we need to pack it with female and gay superheroes, so it's not even appropriate for children anymore, much less boys. And then no one watches it, and you're like, well, or no one, but the popularity declines pretty significantly. You're like, what happened? Well, what happened was you just changed the product into another girl product, and then wondered what happened. It's making a product that appeals to both sexes equally is extremely difficult and very rare. I can't think of very many examples that do it. Harry Potter might be the closest. I think it still appeals more to females than men, but if we look at or boys. But if you look at the way that the actual purchase of the media breaks down, it's still pretty popular with boys as well as girls. Game of Thrones appeals to both the male and female audience. It's basically a soap opera, but it has enough of the violence that it gets kind of both halves. So it's really hard to do that, though. It's really hard to have that balance. In fact, it's usually a little easier to just pick one or the other and do it really well, right? You can sell extra tickets to the Sex and the City movie by making women drag their boyfriends along. Vice versa for like Star Wars. I guess I'll go see Star Wars with my boyfriend. That's not a problem. Like there shouldn't be this judgment over the fact that the sexes like different things. You just, someone who wants to make money in marketing just looks at what is and makes a product for those demographics and doesn't worry about the fact that, why... I can't believe that, like, Star Wars, we need to make it for girls. It shouldn't just be for the boys. It shouldn't be a boys-only club. It's like, well, there's no rule that says girls couldn't like Star Wars before. There was plenty of strong female characters in Star Wars before. A lot of girls like Star Wars. It's more popular with boys. That doesn't mean girls can't like it or don't like it. So you make the product what it is, and then, yeah, some girls will like it, some won't. No big deal. Shouldn't have any judgment on that. Likewise, we shouldn't get angry that boys don't like Barbie. Right? Kind of like you remember the My Buddy doll? It was like, how do we make a doll for boys? It's like, do you need to? Right? Like, why do you need to? G.I. Joe was the idea. Like, what can we have to compete with Barbie? Can we get boys to have something? It's like G.I. Joe. They made a different doll for boys, though. They didn't go, hey, how do we convince boys to buy fashion dolls? They just made a military doll instead. So they just made a different product for boys that was kind of the same idea of the product, right? Like, how do you make superhero product for girls? Well, you kind of already do. It's called My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. or Powerpuff Girls. Both of those were done by Lauren Faust. And she knows how to make great media for girls and has done it on 2 hit shows. And there's a lot of boys who like My Little Pony, believe it or not. Bronies, we call them. There's a lot of boys who like My Little Pony. My son will even watch My Little Pony with my daughter and comment on the stories. He thinks they're funny. They're not his main thing that he would like to watch, but if little sister wants to watch a My Little Pony, he might watch it with her, right? He's not against My Little Pony, but it's not his main, it's not the big thing that appeals to him, right? It's like, what does he play with Legos? It's not My Little Ponies, right? He's over there making Dark Lords and castles and having elves get chopped to pieces and things like that. That's more of a boy thing, okay? So yeah, these things are different. So when you are thinking about the audience, just general marketing stuff, male, female, that matters. And that's going to change how you want to write the story if you're writing to market. I don't worry too much about writing for market. I write the stories that I think are interesting, but, a portion of my books are really written to appeal to my wife, not to appeal to just male demographic or something. So they'll be enjoyable by females. I've had multiple women tell me how much they enjoyed, say, like Water of Awakening or Prophet of the Godseed, or some of these stories where there's, Rod of Awakening, the protagonist is a female, but Prophet of the Godseed is really like a male-focused adventure, I think. But there's women who like it because it's got great interpersonal relationships and drama and a really good plot too. Women like good plots and men like romance. So this is another thing that is interesting, is that romances for men, we in the Western and literary markets, there's no romance for men. We have no idea of what romance for men looks like because no one writes it. And men don't really read it. What do men read? Well, they actually read Japanese, say, light novels, and they watch Japanese romantic comedy anime. That's what boys are watching. That's romance for boys. Girls can like that too, but why does it appeal to boys? Well, the way the stories are constructed are going to be wildly different from the way that you would write romance for women. Romance for women would be about getting like the alpha to pick you, right? The male and the female hate each other, but they eventually figure out that they like each other, and of course, like the male character is. I had a friend on who was doing this on Twitter. He's like the billionaire playboy, bad boy that you have to tame. That's going to be a typical romance thing. Love, Chinibiu, and Other Delusions. These are romantic comedies that are very appealing to males because they are really about, not so much about like getting the 10 out of 10 girl, but finding and developing feelings for a girl who really cares about you and understands you, right? So like the male romantic fantasy is fundamentally different. It's not about status. It's not about getting the most attractive woman. That may even be a male sexual fantasy, but the amorous romantic fantasy for men is really about having a woman that you can trust, that's like virtuous and understands you and cares about what you care about, and appreciates you for your virtue and what you've done for her, rather than for other qualities like your riches or something like that. There's no male romance. So, like, in fact, you would probably want to de-emphasize that. You know, if you wanted to make a romantic comedy that really appealed to men, you'd start with the billionaire playboy. You'd turn him into a pauper somehow. You'd have him, like, lose his identity and no one believes who he is. Or it'd be something like Shallow Hal. So Shallow Hal is a really funny romantic comedy with Gwyneth Paltrow and Jack Black that I think is closer to what a male romance would be, which is that like the male stops chasing women to fall in love with someone who actually cares about him, and then so he learns to get rid of those delusions. Some would say, oh, that's a female fantasy. It's actually more of a male fantasy, is to have a true and authentic loving relationship with a woman, rather than somebody who loves you for your money or for, you know, other reasons like that. You broke the toy. It's like you buy a G.I. Joe and when you get home you open the box and he has lipstick and eyeshadow on. Yeah, that's more what it's like. My Buddy, the My Buddy doll was My Buddy and me. It's like, well, can we have like a Cabbage Patch Kids doll but for boys? And they just marketed it. Tried to like meme it into reality. We always thought, my friends and I always thought My Buddy was stupid. Now, my son had a kind of My Buddy doll. It was a toy skeleton that was his size, and he named it Kevin. Its name is Kevin. And he used to take Kevin around with him everywhere he went. Come on, Kevin. And I would have to carry Kevin around and do Kevin's voice sometimes. He'd take Kevin into his little toy castle. He'd take, he had like one of those little play school castles with like a slide. He'd take Kevin into the castle. He'd take Kevin around. He'd fight Kevin with swords, and Kevin would fight him. You know, so he put Kevin on the back of the trike and take Kevin around, right? Kevin was a skeleton. Yeah, if something ain't broke, don't fix it. I love the Alien movies, Woman Hero. So someone would, I'll respond to let me respond to the Alien movies here. Ripley is a neuter character in the original movie. In the second one, there's some moments where she has actual female moments in Aliens. That's James Cameron really wanting her to not be a neuter character. Rather, when I say neuter, I mean neutral. She's not male or female. Right? She has no inherently female aspects to her personality. If you had switched Ripley out for a male, it would have been the same. So really the conclusion we make from this is not that women dislike female protagonists per se. It's that it's not that men dislike female protagonists per se. It's that they like a certain kind of story, and the physical appearance of the main character in that story is not of utmost importance to them. If she's aesthetically female, great, because we like to look at women. It's more about how the plot proceeds and what the characters do rather than their female or maleness, right? They're going to be more male in general in an action movie because they're doing action things. You know, like there's nothing particularly female about Captain Marvel. It's a trouser roll. You know, so that's I'm not trying to push back against that, but I make this point. It's like, do we really like Ripley as a woman? Or do we just like Alien movies? I think what it is we holistically like the Alien movies with their horror, their gore, their action, their science fiction elements, and the sex of the characters just isn't really important in that context. And that's true. So it's not that it's not that men like or dislike female protagonists. It's that it's just not that important. It's just, they don't care that much. Now, if you were to put Ripley in there and say, we're going to make her female and we're going to make the story female, you would have a whole lot less alien eating people and a whole lot of more people talking about their past relationships, exploring interpersonal conflict, setting each other up with the alien eating them, right? It would be like Game of Thrones with an alien eating people. It would be closer to what you'd get if it was, we're going to really try to make this for women, or we're going to try to make these characters explicitly female. That's what you end up with. And it's one of these, you get this in fantasy a lot. It's a trope I've complained about before, is that all of women's mode of action is convincing men to do things for them in things like Game of Thrones, right? Women don't enact the violence, rather they convince men to do it for them. They convince the Drothaki leader to do something through having sex with him or marrying him, right? They convince their husband to go kill somebody that they don't like, right? Women's mode of action is by manipulating men into doing things rather than by doing things themselves. So if they were doing things themselves, someone might, including me, might say, well, it's either a neuter or a trouser role, because that's not really the way. If we really made Ripley female, she probably wouldn't be on the ship. She'd be at home with kids, right? If we're going to really emphasize the female experience, it probably wouldn't be going on starships. So I think she's a neuter role, personally. And that's not to say anything bad or good about the movie. It's a great movie. Alien in particular, it's one of my favorite movies. Does a tremendous job with everything that's there. It just doesn't matter that Ripley is a man or a woman. And every character, I think, is like that. It just doesn't matter. She becomes female simply because the actress is female. Sigourney Weaver is female, so it comes across as female. Female expressions, female emotions. So she is female because the actress is female, but the role isn't super emphasizing her femaleness. It's really a movie for men. Yeah, Shallow Hal was great. I thought it was a funny movie. And maybe it would be different in like the 2020s Red Pill frame. Like some Red Pill Twitter guy is going to watch Shallow Hal and talk about how bullshit it is. It's like, I can't believe this. No, the whole thing was like, by removing Hal's obsession with beauty, he's able to find someone who actually cares about him as a human being, whereas none of the women before actually did. That's really what the romantic story is about, is that by getting rid of that filter, he was able to find someone that actually cared about him. Not that you ought to get rid of the beauty filter and only date fat girls or something, whatever imaginary message that you want to put into it that's bad. It's really about that there's more to a person than her attractiveness. And if what you really want is deep human connection, you have to think beyond. It needs to go beyond just the skin. It needs to go beyond purely the form of the person to what lays beneath, to their actions, to their soul, right? I always flows in one direction. No one is trying to masculinize Barbie. I wouldn't say they're trying to masculinize Barbie. However, there have been complaints about Barbie's physical appearance for at least 20 years that I can remember, maybe longer, maybe even 30 years. That Barbie's anatomy is unrealistic, and this gives girls an unrealistic view of how the female body's supposed to be. It gives girls body dysmorphia. So there's been a push to make Barbie's features more realistic, which is to take them from a stylization emphasizing the feminine to something that is less so. They even came out with a doll. I don't remember what it's called. This was years ago. This doll that's supposed to look realistic, and she had just like a square torso. She looked very neuter, right? She didn't look feminine. And that was the point, was to like not upset girls when their bodies don't look ultra secondary sex characteristic across the board. But I think that's kind of silly, because it's pretty obvious when you look at something like Barbie, you're looking at an idealized form. Just like when you look at a He-Man toy, you're looking at an idealized form of the male body. Do boys develop body dysmorphia? Some do. It's not emphasized as much. By that I mean like eating disorders and things like that. Using lots of steroids to try to get big and look like Arnold because they're obsessed with their body and how their body looks. Yeah, that totally happens on the male side. It's not talked as much about, but it's there. Do I think He-Man is the cause of that? I do not think so. I think that's just someone trying to achieve an idealized form. There was a movie I watched many years ago called The Adonis. I think it was called The Adonis Factor. Adonis Complex. About gay men who were really obsessed with their appearance and using steroids and stuff to look as good as possible, to look like chiseled, shredded bodybuilders all the time. Because that was the only way that you could compete in that sexual market. The lambda market is really competitive. And so if you want to get a really muscular man. You need to be a really muscular man. So the emphasis is so much on the physical appearance of the subject in question because of the way the culture works that there's like almost no option if you want to date other men that are attractive. You have to be like, you have to get on the juice and get shredded. You know what I mean? It's an interesting look. So yeah, those pressures happen with men, but they're not talked about as much, and there's not as much emphasis of them happening in the heterosexual market, at least in the past. I think that's changed recently. If you pay attention to a lot of the cultural currents in the men's sphere, there's been a stronger emphasis now compared to ever before in my life on the physical appearance that you have as a man and how essential that is to actually be able to get one date with a girl, much less like get lots of girls, get a girl to say yes to a date. You got to be 8% body fat. At least that's what they'll tell you. I don't think that's really true, but the need for men to be hyper sexually attractive is a newer phenomenon. What are men going to do in order to achieve that? Women complain. Women are using plastic surgery to look as good as possible. It's like men will date a 3 that they think is loyal. Happily. Men will happily date down. Men are like, I got to go to the gym and I got to take I got to get a stack of Winstrol and Test and Primo to get freaking shredded so that I can take a picture of my shirt off, so that I can have that on my Tinder profile, so that I can maybe get one woman a month to go out with me. You know? And I'm looking for a woman who's a 4. I'm going to turn myself into a 9 so that I can find a 4 who'll say yes. That's what like the dating market is like for a lot of young men. At least how they perceive it, because of the distortions of like online dating and things like that. So that emphasis is definitely there for men. I don't want to say it's not, and it's getting more intense. Men using a lot of performance enhancing drugs in order to achieve a certain look, where women are getting plastic surgery. Mostly, I feel like women get plastic surgery more often for each other than for men. Men, one of the number one things is complaining about how bad plastic surgery looks. Your fake boobs look dumb. I could drive a truck between them. Things like that. You know, you sucked the fat out of your cheeks and now you look like an Altmer from Skyrim with your buccal fat sucked out of your cheeks. You look gross. Your butt implants look stupid. You got cat eye surgery, so you look like some kind of weird Asian prostitute now. Like most plastic surgery, men don't like it, with the exception of the stuff that looks good, in which case no one ever talks about it. And that's a whole nother thing, right? It's like a woman who has a really deformed nose and gets a nose job, it will just make her more attractive. And no one will say like, oh, I can't believe she had a nose job, because her nose will look normal. So like good plastic surgeons, their work isn't obvious. It's more like just a slight enhancement of what's there, or fixing something that's actually deformed or wrong with the person. Like my aunt got a nose job at one point because when she was a little girl, she stuck a bean up her nose and her nose like grew around it. So she had this weird bump on her nose. She had this weird bumped nose, and no one else did an x-ray. There's a bean in there. They did surgery. They had to do a whole rhinoplasty to correct her nose and give her a nose that looks like mine. You know, a normal looking nose. A little slightly big. My nose is probably bigger than hers. It's very slightly, right? Terminator, Sarah Connor was hot and stuff. Sarah Connor was also like very female in Terminator 2. In the Terminator 1, I mean. Terminator 2, she's more masculine. She really is. We got to be honest. Men have their romances called Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. I do not think Yennefer, I'll throw her into the river. It's all about Triss. I guess the Terminator is kind of the same. Yeah. Talking about your son watching My Little Pony with your daughter reminds me, I used to watch Sailor Moon with my sister growing up. A lot of boys like Sailor Moon. Yeah. I mean, some standards are important. A woman over 400 pounds is a bit much. Yeah, so I'm not trying to say you shouldn't have any kind of physical standards for people. But the point of Shallow Hal was not you should date fat girls, but rather there's more to a person than just their physical appearance. So you need to take the whole person into account. And what a man really wants is not a beautiful woman. He wants a woman who loves him for who he is, loves him for what he does, who he can be, someone who really cares about him. You know what I mean? That's the fantasy. The real fantasy is that the woman actually cares about you for who you are. Ooh, that's a hard one, right? I don't want to see Barbie look realistic. No one does. It's supposed to be an idealized form. That's the point. He-Man is only the cause of greatness. Whatever the question, He-Man is never the wrong answer. Just look at the Giga Chad meme. Men took an idealized body of a man and ran with it and memed it to absurd degrees. 1A a month must be Spanish male model. Yeah. One date a month. Yeah. There's a whole thing like female delusion calculator, where it's like, I need a guy who's over 6 feet tall, makes $100,000 a year, no kids, under 30. And you like plug that in, it's like that's 0.0001% of the population. Your standards are going to have to change. The truth is, women say that, but they adjust their standards all the time based on lots of factors. Well, he doesn't make a lot of money, but he's really good looking. He's really good looking, but he's not tall, right? He's really successful, but he's not that good looking. Or he's really funny, and that makes me just forget about the other stuff. Being funny and charming, this is the problem with the dating market now for young men, is the stuff that used to matter to, like, not just getting in a relationship, but maintaining a relationship, being able to, like, deepen a relationship and have a romance and have a girlfriend and marry them. Those things, you never get to that point where those are the things that matter, right? It's like you have to play this really surface level game to try to get somebody to know you. The whole point is, like, get this person to know you so that they have a chance to like you. Have some common shared experiences so you can get to know each other and know each other's values, what you like and don't like, whether you enjoy being around each other. So the guy who was funny and, like, would go, like, let's take a trip back in time to 2005, right, when I was 22. This is how you got dates, is you went to places where girls were and you talked to them. And if it was apparent that there was a connection and they liked you, you saw them laughing, you'd ask for their phone number and see if they wanted to go out on a date. That's how you got dates. So right away with that game, right? If I go to the bar and I'm getting a girl to crack up and I ask for a number and I get the number and we go out on a date later, right? All my qualities are really on display at the meeting point. And why does it need to happen in a bar? It's because that's a neutral place that's relatively safe for the woman with lots of people around. She's not, if she's getting harassed or something, there's other people that can step in. That's why women go to the bar like 3 or 4 at a time. And the challenge used to be like, how do you take that girl that looks interesting and get her away from her friends so that she can get to know you and like you? So you can tell your jokes or do whatever you're going to do to get her to like you. So that was the challenge back then. So now, what do you do to get a date on Tinder? I know we're going far afield from, like, the topic of the video, but it's kind of interesting to think about. Well, before you can show her how funny you are, you got to get her to swipe. You got to get her to swipe. She doesn't know that you're funny when she swipes. She knows whether you're attractive or not. So your entry point for playing the game with online dating is you have to be attractive. You have to look really attractive. That's your entry point. So your buy-in is expensive. Back in 2005, my buy-in was 0. I could chat up any girl in the bar and it didn't matter. If it was... And it's not even like getting shot down. It would be really apparent whether she was interested in you or not based on how she reacted to what you were saying and what you were doing, right? Or if I played a concert, this would happen. I'd play a concert, I'd talk to a girl after I played the concert, and then I'd invite her to go across the street to the bar with me, and we'd go hang out at the bar and have some drinks, and we'd just have a date right there, and get to know each other a little bit. And if there was something there, then you exchange numbers and you go out on some more dates, right? And the relationship begins with the understanding of like, we're looking at a romantic relationship. It's not like what a lot of people do now where they have friends. They're like in these friend zone areas and they're kind of hoping to kind of stumble into a romance. It's like, I'm in a situationship with Bill over there. It's like, has Bill ever asked you out? He's like, yeah, maybe. Are you sleeping with Bill? Yeah, a little. Totally weird for like 2005. So all your qualities, like your game, like does game really help you in 2024 if you're trying to do the online? It's certainly if you're trying to do the online dating thing, probably not. You have to, if you want to use game, if you want to get your game up, then you have to go to bars or something to meet women. And the problem with that, as I've talked about before, is like I meet so many people. I was like, why can't I find a good woman? It's like, where are you meeting them? I'm meeting them at bars. Okay, you're not going to find a good woman at a bar. I know, been there, done that. It's really rare. It's like, you should try church. Now, this is a piece of advice that people either love or hate. The people who love it are the people who haven't found someone who they found someone at church years ago. The people who hate it are the people like, I go to church. The women there are not interested in talking to me. It's like, yeah, bro, you have to also get your game up, right? You're going to where the women are. You're going you're employing one filter, which is like, we'll go to mass on Sunday is a good filter. Yeah. I read someone's Substack the other day and he made the point about this. I think it was Isaac's Substack. Often if you're dating a Catholic girl, she's so poorly catechized, you're basically missionary dating her anyway, right? You're having to convert her to her own religion that she supposedly has because she's so poorly educated about it. Bad catechesis is not exclusively a Catholic thing, by the way. Raised as a Protestant, bad catechesis was the norm at every Protestant church I went to. People didn't understand their own religions. They just came to church on Sunday because they liked it, or they felt they had to, or they felt they ought to, or they wanted to be part of a community. And the like deeper doctrinal stuff didn't really matter that much. Okay. But if she goes to like mass on Sunday, that's one filter. The thing is you got to know how to have game at like the coffee hour after Divine Liturgy or whatever, right? How do you have game at the coffee hour after Divine Liturgy? I couldn't tell you that because I'm married and I don't worry about that at all, but it's not going to be the same as the game at the bar. So the game that I had in 2005, which is like, in a lot of places I'm at the bar performing, so it's really easy to talk to the girls afterwards and just she'll be the one asking you all the questions, which makes it really easy. But that doesn't work in church. It's like, what do you do? I'm a teacher. Oh, I'm a teacher too. No, it's like hard to know where to find comments. How do you get that person to ask you a personal question? How do you make jokes? Because in the bar, like, jokes can be raunchy or silly or a little bit gross, and that might even offend the woman, but also she'll laugh, which will make her like you. And she'll also think, oh, you're a little bit of a bad boy because you said something naughty. Maybe I'll like you a little bit more now. All that game doesn't work at church. So that's the other problem, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to meet a good girl at church. All right, well, you can't really use your game, and chances are you're not that attractive anyway, right? That's okay. Just need to know where you're at. Maybe you need to improve yourself. Like if you wanted to meet a girl at church, I'm just thinking about this from my own like life experiences. It's like, first of all, you have to dress the part. So if you go to the club, you dress like you're going to go to the club. What are you trying to look? You're trying to look rich and successful. Well, church, you can signal that the same way. Yeah, people are dressed nice. Well, have a better fitting suit. Make it nicer quality, a nicer tie. Wear cufflinks. You don't want to like put on a show for the Lord, right? It should still be a dark suit. But trust me, like a tailored suit will make you stand out from all the people who are wearing off-the-rack stuff. Most off-the-rack stuff actually fits probably pretty good. But like, if you have a really good-looking suit that's just a normal, modest suit, you will look more serious. You'll just look better to women. It seems like stupid, but like, and then you're going to have to figure out whatever game can exist in the church setting for a woman. I can't think of any. So you'll have to figure that part out. So yeah, it's a filter, right? She goes to mass every week. That's probably good. But you could also just meet a girl at a bar that you end up asking like, oh yeah, do you ever go to mass? And she'd be like, oh, I go to mass every week. I go to St. Edward's or something. And you're like, oh, you're Catholic and I'm Lutheran. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we could still date. Who knows, right? It's hard. It's really hard for young men right now. And honestly, it's hard for young women too, for different reasons. The sexes are separated. For men looking at women, they're like, oh, well, women have it easy. But women are not getting what they want. Men are not getting what they want. And the whole system is set up to extract money from them and keep them from getting what they want. What do men want? What do most men want? Most men want what Shallow Hal wanted. He wanted an authentic, loving relationship with a person who cared about him and knew him. That's what most men really want. They want a partner in life. They want like their Eve. They don't want to just be Don Juan DeMarco. They don't want to be Don Juan out there sleeping with every girl. A lot of men have a fantasy about that, but they know it's not realistic. So what they really want for happiness is like the wife and the family, someone who really loves them. Women want kind of the same thing, right? They want a man who really loves and cares for them and will fulfill all of those roles. But they're not getting that. Why? Well, because of this whole hypergamy thing where in the absence of the context of knowing a man right away, like him talking to her when he meets her, they're just exclusively picking men that they find attractive right away. And so those few attractive men get all the picks. And they don't really have to choose any woman. And so the women are just never being chosen and they're not getting what they want. So they're not choosing men who will choose them. They're choosing men who won't choose them. And men are just, I don't know, desperate at this point. It's all messed up. It's totally screwed up. Giga Chad does not look dumb, though. Got carp lips for Instagram. I got carp lips? I don't know. It's sad, real beautiful women with full outer space. Yeah, someone made this point. I don't remember who. I'm certainly not the only one. Women do it because of other pressures, not because they think men actually want it. But like Hollywood actresses are being pressured to get buccal fat removal because of like gay men and who want them to look that way, rather than real men who are like, now you look like crap because you suck the fat out of your face. You look malnourished and ugly and alien, right? Yeah, they went outer space. I have a shirtless Goku as my phone wallpaper. Or like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure looks on the surface so homoerotic, right? It's funny. Well, could it be the men are the ones who want a deeper connection? I think women want a deeper connection too. The problem is that women have different selection criteria and a different selection process. Men are like, both men and women are like, what's the best I can get? But men are like, what's the best woman I can get that will actually love me? And women are like, I want this whole giant grocery bag of traits. How many of those can I get in a man before they get to know him? Right? They're putting a lot more filters in both on the front end. And to look at it from the female perspective, women are a lot more vulnerable, so you need those filters, right? You need a guy who you're going to feel safe around. You need a guy who is going to be successful enough to support you, because if he's broke, there's almost no point in dating him, because he can't really do the things that you would want to do with a partner. That may seem really callous, but it's the same thing with a man. If you're dating a woman and she's let's say she's like super obese, she's not really going to be a good candidate for a mom because of the health problems that go along with that, right? It's not to say obese people can't ever be married to each other or anything. They find love, they have kids, they do all kinds of things. But a lot of men will have that evaluation as well, right? Or the woman has too much of a sexual past, which means I can't trust her to be loyal. Like the loyalty is a huge thing for men when it comes to valuing a female partner for the long term. Will she be loyal? So that's what men are trying to. But women, it's a whole bunch of things that they have to filter in before they get to. Now you can get to know me, and I can see if I really like you. Which is why game is so important, because you can jump over all of those filters straight to now I'm here and you're getting to know me and you might like me, and then she'll have a lot more I don't know what the word is. Like she'll negotiate down her super high standards that make no sense. She negotiates them down after she knows you. Problem is getting the girl to know you, and in online dating that's just impossible. It's just you're screwed. So women don't get the men that they need to be with, and men either get as many women as they want, so they never have to even think about settling down unless they want to, which they can. A man can be a 10 and live the crazy life, and then just decide, well, I'm going to pick one and marry her, and do that if he wants to. Rock stars do it. I've known rock stars that did it. Lived a crazy life for 20 years and then said, well, now I want a family. They have the option of doing that. I'm going to find a woman, and she's going to be young enough to have kids, and I'm going to love her, and we'll get to know each other. And of course I'll love her just because I'll get to know her, and then we'll have kids. They can just decide to do that later. But for women, it's not the same. So women, they need to have more filters. They need to be applying more filters and better filters now too. Get your church games up. I don't know what church is a hard place to find a date. It's tough, right? A woman doesn't go to church looking for a date. That's the other problem, right? She's not going to mass going, I hope there's a nice boy who asks me out. Hopefully she's going to mass to worship the Lord. Okay. So, you meeting a woman is more like, how do you get to know me enough that I can get you in a different situation where you can think about me other than that guy at mass, right? It's like, let's go to coffee and talk about the charity, and then, I think that maybe we should go out. It's not the best. Versus 2005, I can roll up in a bar and meet a girl and be like, what's up? Boom, 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 boom. We joke. What are you drinking? I'll get you a drink. Boom, we have a date, right? You just like roll up and talk to her and be charismatic, and you end up with a date. You can't do that now. And then COVID just nuked that, right? Like closed all the bars. It's like, how are you going to go to a bar to meet a girl? How are you going to go to a club to meet a girl? How are you going to go to a social event to meet a girl? I don't know. I'll tell you. So like the one nobody thinks of, which is like, you want to meet girls to date, you need to take up salsa dancing, ballroom dancing, jazz dancing, like Lindy Hop kind of stuff. You need to take that up. That's my advice for young men. And dudes who do it will tell you, it's like, man, I go to the salsa night and there's like 10 dudes and 100 women, and all of them are hot and all of them want to go out with you. If you're good. If you're a good dancer, that's like an immediate erotic thing for them. And they start thinking of you in that mode. They're having fun. They love to dance. They love to move their bodies. They love the music. And then you talk to them, and you're leaping over all of these filters, like has to make $100,000, has to be 6 feet tall. I've known dudes who were 5'5" salsa dancers. It's like they could date as many women as they want. They just go to the salsa night. Go to the salsa night at the Starline and get 5 phone numbers for the week. Talk to them. The one I like the best, I'm going to go out with her on Friday. That's 2005. That's how it was in the 2000s. You can't do that anymore. Nothing's so, it's bad. Man, I wouldn't want to be 21 trying to find a partner right now. It really sucks. Yeah, at the end of the day, women want security and consistency. Love comes before that, of course, but she wants a good man in a home. Yeah, that's critical, right? Like if you're thinking about how are you going to have a life with someone, well, they have to be able to contribute to that enough to where you can do that, right? Like they have to have a job and be stable enough that if you have kids, you can stay home at least for a while with the kid, at least a couple months or a couple years, right? So if a man doesn't have that going on, you really have to discard him as a romantic partner, even if you think he's really great, really funny, he has all these other qualities. But if you meet a man at a bar and he makes you laugh, and then you get to know him later, and it's like it turns out he's a loser, could he stop being a loser because I really like him? Or you stop having the thing of like, I really need a guy that's like got a good corporate job, and it's like maybe he's a bartender, but I really like him, and he still does work really hard, and then you make it work, right? So there's lots of things that factor into a partner, right? Are they a good person? How do they treat you? How consistent are they? Like, are they loving? Are they emotionally intimate and also emotionally continent? Meaning like they're not out of control, right? You feel safe with them. They're going to do all of those things correctly. Then, yeah, the guy doesn't need to make $100,000 a year if he's meeting those other criteria. As long as they're good enough to like make that life work, then it'll work. But the hard part is we never get to that get to know each other phase. That get to know each other phase is really hard to get into now for young people. That's just sad. That sounded sad. My sides are killing me. Wasn't the old filter your fathers or brothers? Yeah. Because we were in communities, matchmaking used to happen more with the consent of the community and the fathers and the families. Now it's a free-for-all where parents aren't involved. There's no community, right? And that's the other thing is like meet a girl at church. She may be used to setting up her dates outside of the community where there's no judgment. She's not going to want to date a guy at church and shoot him down and then have to see him at church again. No one likes that. It's awkward. And so that's why it used to be good to meet girls at bars. Is like if it didn't work out, the worst that maybe you see her at the bar a couple weeks later and it's like, hey, I hope you're doing okay. We don't have to be friends. It's not like, oh, there's Bill over there kneeling for prayer. Don't look this way. Oh, it's look this way. You look this way. Don't look back. Don't look back. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be awkward. I have to switch parishes. I have to go to another parish. People used to get to know each other at work, but now it's too easy to get fired. I think optionality these days is to not date at work. It has too many potentials for problems. I don't have to go deep into it. You guys know what's up. It's better to meet people in other social situations that are more neutral. Yeah, most of the people I know met their future spouse at work in the military. Proximity helps a lot. Proximity is big. Why does proximity matter? Because you're not starting with all these filters up like, I need a woman that's like this and a man who's like this. It's like you meet a woman, she's really good. You find out, oh, she has like 3 ex-boyfriends or she's divorced, right? And you're like, it's okay. I understand her enough now that I can forgive those things, right? I'll forgive it, right? And same thing for how a woman meets a man. Oh, he's divorced, but he's really good. I understand why it happened now because I got to know him, and I feel really good about maybe the future with him, and I forgive that. Versus setting that up ahead of time, like I want a man who's never divorced. I want a man who's never been married. I want a man who makes $100K a year, 6 feet tall, white, long hair, great beard with a bit of gray on it. Sorry, guys. You see him on your screen, but he's the only one, and he's already taken. You're not getting this. You're not getting this guy. And I don't make $100K a year either. Friends' parents met because their mutual friends set up a blind date. Yeah, I used to have fun things like that. I haven't heard of anyone having that in a long time. One couple in my old friend group met in a chat room site and eventually got married, but they're outliers. I knew multiple people who got married by playing World of Warcraft together. Why did that one work? Well, first of all, there's no physical attractiveness filter. It's just you and another person talking and getting to know each other, having a mutual experience that you bond over. Like the raid, man. We raided Ulduar together and we fell in love. I know someone that happened to, and that's great. It's great that it happened to them. I think it's just a fantastic thing that they were able to meet and fall in love on World of Warcraft. Bars are horrible for meeting women. They're great for meeting women. Are they great for meeting the kind of woman you want to marry, though? Maybe not. At least they used to be. I don't know now because I don't try to pick up women in bars anymore. I haven't tried in a lot of years. But back in the 2000s, they were great. Quite a lot of women will date a bum because he has a six-pack. I could fix him, etc. Well, they're making all of those everybody does this. It's not just women. Men do this as well. But the woman says he's really hot. Maybe I'll let one of those standards slip down enough to level out the hotness, because I don't want to lose access to that hot body. He's really hot. I'm very attracted to him. Men will do the same thing. Oh my God, she's so annoying, but she's hot, right? So men do the same thing. Girl's hot. She has a terrible personality. Can't cook. How many dudes you know that it's like they have a mega hot girlfriend who's just worthless? It's almost like the meme for like rich men. It's like he's 45, rich. He has a 25-year-old girlfriend who can't talk to him about anything. Just there's nothing up top. She's attractive from here down because the cerebrum, there's just nothing cool going on there. Right? Why is he with her? Because she's sexually exciting. She's physically attractive. It feels good to be around someone young and energetic, and it feels exciting to sleep with him. Men do it all the time too. They just do it in different ways. They do it on different lines. Where does 100K even come from? They base it off anything, or are they just pulling it out of nowhere? Well, I wouldn't say they're pulling it out of nowhere. Okay. Women aren't pulling this kind of thing out of nowhere. Why $100,000? Well, $100,000 is about the amount that you need currently to have one partner, one person in the marriage work, and one stay home and be able to buy a house. You need to make 6 figures now. So median income used to be 50K, right? 50K used to be able to do that. You could buy a house and have a car and possibly have your spouse stay home or only work part-time. And you could have a life that way. Now it's 100K because housing is so expensive. So if a woman wants a man who's capable of buying a house, capable of letting her stay home with kids, he's got to make 6 figures. If that seems unreasonable, it is, but that's the world we live in. And from there, you have to start making sacrifices, which is like, can you buy a house making 50K a year? Yes, you can. It's going to be really, really shitty. And so if a woman is setting up the filters before she even meets a guy, then she's just going to set him up to her ideal, right? Her bottom level ideal, which is going to be a decent house. We have a car. I don't have to work. I can have kids, right? It's like to have the lifestyle of her grandma from the 1950s. The guy has to make 100K a year. It's not pulled out of nowhere, right? We can look at this stuff, and depending on which urban area you're living in, it can be higher. You may be able to get by with 80K a year in Houston because the cost of living is a little bit lower. In LA, it's got to be closer to $250,000 a year. Okay, $250K a year is what you have to make in order to not even have half of what I have in Houston. That's how it is, right? That's my husband's situation, right? Yeah, it's hard, right? You can make it do with less, but then you're going with less. Like you're gonna buy a worse house, or you're not gonna own a home, right? You're letting go of home ownership. You're gonna have to live in apartments to raise your family. And most people, especially white Americans, we grew up living in houses in suburbs. So to have that same standard of living we grew up with, where like, and my generation, mom didn't stay home, but maybe like Gen X or earlier, mom staying home, dad going to work, owning a single family home, kids have maybe share a bedroom or have their own bedroom. You have a TV and you have a car, right? In order to have the life of The Simpsons, you have to make 100K a year now. Homer was considered a loser. Simply with Married with Children. It's like, here's this loser shoe salesman, boomer. Can't live like that now, having his job. That having his job, you'd have a studio apartment with rats eating your toes. Right? The economy is so much worse now because of that. Not to go on too much of a rant. We've gone kind of far afield from like marketing towards men and women and what men and women find appealing in stories. So let me head back to that for a little bit, and then It's getting a little bit late, and we'll call it there for today. We'll have a little bit shorter stream. The reason I started a little bit later, got caught in traffic, took the kids to the interactive aquarium here, where you can like pet lobsters and stingrays and even giraffes, which is pretty cool. Anyway, so here's the big thing. There are males and females generally want different things out of their stories. Making a story that tends to be more attractive for females or males, to me, has no moral. There's nothing moral or immoral about it. It's an amoral choice, and it's an amoral outcome as well, whether you make the choice or not. It's just how it is. If you are choosing to target male or female as a demographic when you're writing, you need to know what sort of things they prefer. So women prefer things that are emotionally and relationally complex and interesting. Emotionally and relationally complex or interesting. So the interpersonal conflict is where the best conflict is if you want to keep women interested. And the conflict and relationship between characters should have complexity and depth with emotions, meaning there's multiple emotions that happen. It's not just like a love or a hate, right? There's going to be maybe things that are conflicting that go on there that characters have to resolve. So the core of the conflict is going to be interpersonal and emotional. For men prefer conflicts that are more outside of the self. That is, they are a real problem that needs to be solved by the plot. We have to figure out who the murderer is. We have to figure out how to blow up the Death Star. We have to figure out how to defeat the Nazis, okay, and how that's going to happen. So the emphasis, rather than being about interpersonal and emotional, is about real things that have to be solved, and tends to be more aspirational and action-oriented. So there's a stronger emphasis on events happening that solve the problem versus people figuring out each other to solve a problem. Some genres tend to be really focused on females. Romance is one. What's called chick lit. I didn't make it up. Don't burn the messenger. Chick lit, basically romantic comedies, tends to be a more female-focused demographic. Those things exist outside of Western media with things that are more male-focused, like, romantic comedy anime, and things like that men are more interested in as well. Some genres are almost entirely dominated by males, by the way. Military science fiction is like, that's a male genre. Military history. These are male-dominated genres because they cue into that thing that I talked about. Real problems have to be solved. We're going to solve them with real things and a bunch of events that happen in order to solve them. A really good writer that wants to appeal broadly doesn't necessarily have to write something that is equal for both, but contains elements that are going to be appealing to both sexes, maybe not in equal amounts, but in some quantity. The easiest way to think about this is with an ABC story. So this is like really standard TV writing. You have an A story, that's your main conflict, main problem that has to be solved, main plot goal. You have your B story, which is the romance. And then you have your C story, which is going to be like the best friend kind of auxiliary character subplot. So if you're going to make a crazy big action movie and you want women to like it, well, then you put a romance at the center of it. You make it something like True Lies, where there is a problem that needs to be solved. The terrorists are going to blow up the city, but there's a really strong emphasis on the B story of the romance between the characters. They have to solve their marriage. Or if you're looking at a mystery, you can write a mystery where, yes, we have to figure out who the killer is, but there's also this man and this woman who hate each other but love each other. They got to figure that out in order to be able to work enough as a team to solve the mystery. That's going to be a mystery plot that women are going to really enjoy, is that strong romance B story. John Grisham has used this technique, by the way, in Rainmaker. So if you ever read the book Rainmaker, there's also Francis Ford Coppola did an adaptation of it, a really good one with Danny DeVito and Matt Damon in it, where the B story is this romance between the protagonist and this woman he basically saves from an abusive relationship. That's really completely unrelated to the main plot goals, but it's strong enough and it's high enough in it that you have a romance plot that both men and women can be really interested in seeing through to the end. It keeps it interesting for everybody. Men like romances. Men enjoy romantic subplots. They just like the main plot to be not a romance in most cases. Whereas women, they like it to be equal. They tend to like a really strong romance in with that important plot point that has to be fixed. So yeah, the romance B story, that's where you're really going to hook female readers in a maybe, you know, like a mystery or fantasy or something like that. That romance B story is where you're going to want to put an extra emphasis if you want to catch the female readers. Beyond that, you don't need to think too much about it. You know, write the book that you want to write it in the genre that you want to write about. Just don't be surprised if it's like only men want to read your book or only women want to read your book, or it's really unbalanced. Everything's going to be unbalanced to some extent between them, depending on just demographics. It's not a moral judgment that you wrote a book or wrote a story that men like more than women or that women like more than men. I wouldn't go down that path. That's what kills franchises like Star Wars, is you try to make it for girls, but it ends up failing. And the reason it ends up failing is that the girls are not interested in Star Wars because Star Wars is mainly about, you know, big, giant, explosive conflicts. So trying to add in female stuff to it doesn't make it appeal to women, but it makes it lose its appeal to men. So trying to control this too actively can sabotage your story, in my opinion. Just kind of go with what you want to do for the genre and know where it is. If you're trying to really tightly write for market, you just need to be aware of what the genre expectations are and what a typical reader for your genre would be, whether he'd be male or she would be female, and what kind of things they tend to like in a story, right? I'll give you an example from one of my books, City of Silver, and the whole Moonsong trilogy has a really strong romance in it. And I wrote that book for my wife, so it's made to appeal to her. Therefore, female readers tend to find that one a little bit more appealing because the relationships between the characters has a stronger emphasis than some of my other books that are more about action and philosophy and weird explosive events happening. Okay, I think the last book I read was The Road by Cormac McCarthy. True crime stuff is really popular with women. Wonder why that is. Maybe because you have interpersonal high drama as part of the crimes. Absolutely. That's really how you need to sell true crime. The technical parts of it are really interesting for men as well, right? Like how does a forensic scientist discover the facts of the case? That's really interesting. But why it happened, that's what hooks the female reader. It hooks male readers as well, but which one likes it more? Which one prefers that? Again, it's not 100% one of the way or the other, but you're going to get more of a female emphasis on why they did it. If you get into the why you did it, you end up with a lot of interpersonal conflict. Why did this person murder his mother? Oh, his mother was like this, or he was like this, and this thing was, all of those little things that add up to the why. The why is what makes true crime really interesting. And so I think you can appeal to both sexes really easy. That's why things like Law and Order is really popular in general, is that it has those things. It has the why, the interpersonal part that drives the crime and causes the crime. And then it's got the technical part, like, the CSI shows, CSI, where we do crime scene investigations. That's like a technical thing where we're figuring out, but really we're trying to get to the root of why somebody did something. And I think that's the big thing. Yeah, I agree with Just a Man. The big why is the big what is. Right. Okay. Medieval fantasy is very male. Yeah, chivalry, men going out and doing heroic deeds. It's very male. However, like Arthurian stuff was still popular with the female audience way back hundreds of years ago. Women still like to read that. A classical romance would be something like with a wide sweeping scope, not just something about men and women liking each other. How do you make stories that repel women? Husband and I had been married for 12 years. We finally got a house after 10 years. Military obligations had a lot to do with it too, but allowed us to save up for a house. Yeah. It can be hard if you're starting at zero to like get to a house. And it gets harder every year. It's crazy. It gets harder every single year to do that. That's why I like, my point is like, women they're not just being hyper unrealistic by saying I want a man who makes 100,000. That's the number in their mind that they know is necessary to have the lifestyle that they want to pursue. You can like it or hate it. They may adjust that expectation if they actually know the guy, and especially if they're young. Can he potentially do that? Right. I have a couple of friends that met in the military, and they've done really good. They were able to buy a house when they got out of the military. They've done good. Yeah. Would you say Lord of the Rings is very male? I would. Well, especially the book. There's like no female characters. The romance between Aragorn and Arwen might be very interesting, but it's not emphasized in the books and really not very much in the movies either. It's really about we have a big problem to solve and we're going to solve it with our bravery, strength, and friendship. It's not that women don't like Lord of the Rings. Women really like it or it wouldn't be as popular as it is. I know lots of women who love Lord of the Rings and love the stories of it. But yeah, it's going to be more male, obviously, because of the way that it's emphasized. Harry Potter tends to be more female, but it's still really popular with males because there's a lot of interpersonal stuff, right? There's a lot of problems that have to be solved that Harry has to figure out how to solve the problem with Snape, solve the problem with Hermione, solve the problem with Ron, right? There's a lot of like, I have to fix my friendships in order to accomplish my goals, but the goals are still really tangible and real. Like Voldemort really is a bad guy that's doing things. I really have to save people. I really have to get into the Chamber of Secrets and save Ginny, right? I have to actually do things. There's actually plot. And part of it is that J.K. Rowling writes mysteries within this context of fantasy. Men are really attracted to complex fantasy, worlds. That's just something men like. It's what attracts men to sci-fi is like, how is the ship really cool? Does the science work, right? Women are more like, is it exciting to watch the characters interact? Men like to watch characters interact, and they find that exciting as well, but not as much. It's just a matter of emphasis, I guess. So yeah, Harry Potter, there's a lot of interpersonal conflict that Harry has to fix in order to solve the big problems. But there's still big problems that got to be solved. That's all. I had some 70-year-old boomer call me lazy because I didn't have a house the other day. Yeah, that's typical. It's always funny to me when baby boomers call me lazy. If I criticize a baby boomer, this is usually what you say is like, okay, baby boomers did a bad thing. And the rebuttal is not, oh, well, we thought that was good or that was the best option at the time, which I understand, right? But we can still correct this in the future, right? Baby boomers chose to have their wives go into work, which was maybe not the best choice. And that's a judgment call so that we can make better choices in the future. Their response is, well, you're lazy. You're bad. Here's a bad thing you did. You're bad. You're lazy. I always find that funny. I was like, let me tell my wife, hey, did you know that I'm like a lazy bum who can't do anything? Did you know how lazy I am? I'm so lazy. And I can tell it to all of you, I am so lazy. I'm going to link you. Where is my Amazon page? Here you go. Here, I'm going to link my Amazon page. You can see how horribly lazy I am. How I don't do any work and I never get anything done. But it's just funny. It's like, you're lazy. It's like that. You might as well like call me black. You're black. Okay. Whatever you say, sir. You're an alien. All right. I would go so far to say medieval non-fantasy is very male, such as the movie Braveheart. Yeah. But women love Braveheart. Why? Most of the women that I've known who've seen it really like Braveheart. Because there's romance. The B story, there's two B stories that kind of go one after the other. The romance B stories are really strong and really compelling and really interesting. And there's also some deeper things, right? Like the fact that William Wallace kind of cucks the Longshanks' son, right? Edward II. He cucks him, right? Women find that compelling. Because it's such a like, I don't know, it's such a vicious thing to do. You could say that it's bad that they find that compelling, but I find it interesting as well, right? It just kind of makes William Wallace that much more of a like grandiose character to do that. All right, I think that's about it for today. That's my whole spiel on the marketing stuff. I'll get back to more live writes this week, and now that I have internet, I should have some more videos coming up. So anyway, stay tuned for that. I appreciate everybody coming by. James Montoya says, I liked Water of Awakening. I'm so glad. You're going to like King Leopard. That's coming out this year. Make sure you've read Needle Ash, which is book 2. Because King Leopard book 3 is coming. Helga will return with her whole retinue and have, there'll be a crazy adventure with lots of stuff happening. And a romance. There's a romance. Oh, I put a romance. This one has a really strong romance, by the way. Very strong. I really loved writing the romance in this one because it was very much about kind of like the Shallow Hal thing. It's kind of the male romance of like someone who really loves me and I can depend on 100% and is loyal to me. Not I've married someone with high status, or I've got the most beautiful. I've got a harem of beautiful women at my beck and call. That's kind of a male sexual fantasy, but the male romance fantasy is a loyal, dependable woman who really loves me. Even when I have nothing, she'll support me. Right. So that's that one. So Needle Ash is coming. Jesse White, I think, is doing the cover. I believe he's doing the cover. I asked him to do the cover. So I hope he will do a cover for me because he's a great painter. So he'll do a painted cover. We'll get that going and it'll be great. That's coming later this year. So if you are a patron, you actually have access to all of it already. So let me make sure I link Patreon, because you could be reading all the King Leopard books right now if you were a patron. I think I have all 3 of them there. Now I'm going to put them out probably as one big volume. It's actually going to test the limits of the Amazon hardback. It's going to be at its limit. But anyway, you can read all 3 of them if you're a member of Patreon. And so, yeah, you can do that. Or you can buy them for $500. Here, let me find the shop. You know, they're $500 a piece if you want to buy them. If you want to read them early and don't want to be a patron, you can give me $1,500. Otherwise, you can just be a patron for a lot less money and read them. Or maybe buy them when the crowdfund goes live. Okay, so that's going to be it for today. I appreciate everybody stopping by. The first 40 minutes is me talking more about like marketing to men and women and what kind of stories men and women like, what kind of stories are popular with both, which ones are really popular with women, which ones are really popular with men. You don't need a whole lot to think about this. Like what is Sex in the City about and why don't men like that? It's because there's not real problems to be solved and there's no honor there, right? Versus why do men like Master and Commander? Because there's real problems to be solved and we're going to solve them by doing things and being clever and by fighting and killing, right? Really easy to understand those two, and then as we go further down the line, we can see we can mix them a little bit, but the emphasis is still usually going to be one way or the other, and there's nothing wrong with that. I have no moral judgments about that. If something is really liked by women and not by men, that's just how it is. And if you're a woman who really likes violent Master and Commander movies, that's great too. There's nothing wrong with that. So you're not inclined to be like, oh, I'm a woman and therefore I must read romance, or I'm a man and I'm not allowed to read any kind of romance because that wouldn't, yeah. I think a lot of men are finding, I say men, I'm going to just use that broadly, especially young men, are finding that they really like romance stories, but they only find them in ways that they find appealing in Japanese media. So it's like the Japanese anime, it's like they liked Toradora, or they really liked that romance in Toradora. It was very compelling and very funny and an entertaining show. They really enjoyed the romance portion of it more than they would normally do in a normal movie, but that's okay. Okay. All right. So that's it. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day. We'll find some more music to put up here. I just made a video go live because I'm like, I want to put some background music, and then I just totally like forgot about it from then on. So let's do, I don't know, do this one. Some music going here. All right. Thanks, folks. I'll see you all next time. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hate end of story time skips. I don't know whether I do or don't like that. I haven't thought about that. All right. I'll see you all next time. Have a great day.